How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Fraud on the Telly. In today's video, we're answering a very important question. Does Critical Role have a metagaming problem? And did Travis metagame in Campaign 3, Episode 28, and potentially in some other instances? Today we'll be examining all the evidence in and around this Chetney incident and determining if our boy Travis really is a dirty metagamer. If you enjoyed the video or learned something new, make sure you Eldritch Blast that like button. Follow up with a lay on hands to your homie the subscribe button, and make sure you Dimension Door out with that bell. Okay, let's get right into it. So before we analyze our evidence, let's talk about metagaming for a second. What is metagaming? Besides being a term that's thrown around way too often in the role-play community, metagaming is one of the top #1 no-nos that you do in a role-playing like scenario. But what exactly is it? It seems a lot of people have different varying definitions and severities on what exactly metagaming is, and some people don't even think it's that bad. Broadly, metagaming refers to when a character, let's say I'm playing a character, I use information that I have learned outside of the knowledge of my character and then use it within my character. For example, let's say that my party is fighting some undead creature that me, the player, Fraud, is extremely familiar with. Let's say I know that the creature is resistant to necrotic damage, and let's say that I may not say this out loud, but I decide not to use necrotic damage spells on the creature. This is a form of metagaming, a rather small one, but there are more egregious examples. Let's say I were to openly say out loud in my character, don't use necrotic damage spells on this creature. Now, this is a little bit more of an egregious sin of metagaming. The question arises, would the character I'm playing know this information about the creature? Would they know it with a roll? Would they know it without a roll? If I determine that they could possibly know it without a roll and I just inject my own thoughts into the character, this is potentially metagaming unless you really do think that your character would know this. Personally, I always check this with the DM. If I'm playing online, maybe I'll send them a DM, an instant message while we're playing and be like, hey, would my character know this? Or maybe I'll just ask the DM straight up and see if he'll give me a roll. Now, can you see metagaming ranges in a variety of severities, from
small little things to
larger, big, problematic events.
Everyone's had that player at their table who's the known metagamer, or the player that you constantly have to worry about metagaming. For as bad as you may think it may get, or maybe you've seen a really bad metagamer at your table, I can almost guarantee they're nothing compared to the crazy world of Grand Theft Auto roleplay. If you want to see some wild accusations and stories of metagaming, I highly suggest a deep dive into GTA roleplay, because these guys are crazy. For example, I'm talking about people who stream Grand Theft Auto on a roleplay server, people who go on to others' stream to gain information to help them personally with their character, and then use that information. That's like one of the most blatant instances of metagaming, and probably some of the worst metagaming I've seen. And let me tell you, it gets fiery over there. So now that we've kind of established exactly what metagaming is, let's take a look at our evidence. Exhibit A, the Chetney U incident. So the Chetney U incident is kind of what spurred on all of this metagaming talk again in Campaign 3. Now, if you're a longtime Critical Role fan, you know that metagaming is nothing new in Critical Role, especially as a discussion point. People are always going to be accusing the cast of metagaming, especially when things look a little sus. Sometimes the cast are metagaming a little bit, sometimes they're not. Most of the time, from my experience over all 3 campaigns, there is different levels of metagaming that go on, but most of them are rather harmless. The Chetney U situation with Travis is a little bit different from most of your other examples of metagaming that we can find throughout the campaigns. You see, in these series of episodes, the cast had a guest player, Erika Ishii. Now, this guest character was very different from all other guest characters basically that have been in Critical Role so far. You see Erika and Matt work together to come up with a story for Dusk as kind of an antagonist to the party. This is really the first time that any guest character has come on as a straight up antagonist to the party, working towards their detriment. However, this was basically a complete secret kept from all of the cast and many members of the production crew. So you can see how this kind of controversy would arise when Travis's character, Chetney, would have a rather odd conversation with Erika's character, Dusk. Was she you at this point? She was Dusk. In a very odd move, Chetney begins questioning Dusk's motive, basically to her face in a one-on-one conversation, saying, hey, if you're here to kill the Callaways, here to kill or capture Fern, I'll help you. Just let me know how much money is in it for me, and I'll help you. He says, I'm an experienced guy. I've been around the world. I know a thing or two. I can see what you're up to. Now, according to Travis, we learn afterwards that this was a relative shot in the dark that he was using to kind of suss you out. Eventually, Travis rolls an insight check after you basically denies these accusations, which, by the way, if you haven't watched the episode, he was completely spot on. It took a lot of us by surprise, especially in the chat, as everyone in the chat was freaking out. There were so many accusations of metagaming, but this is why we don't read Twitch chat when we watch Critical Role. We have been led to believe that you and Dusk's role as an antagonist was kept extremely secret. When the ultimate reveal happened, literally like later on in that episode, maybe an hour after Chetney and Dusk had this conversation where Chetney basically calls her out, reads her like a book, and then, surprise, surprise, the eventual reveal happens where Dusk, you, reveals their true form and their true intentions to capture Fern and the Callaways. So obviously, some questions arrive. After the episode, Travis just said he began putting things together over the course of the weeks where Erika's character has appeared, and just wondered to himself, maybe they're trying to capture her. The rest of the cast, we learned, had completely no idea what was going on. Somehow they had remained spoiler free, as we got to remember, there was time between these episodes. Erika was on several episodes. We don't know how much time they took in between recording these episodes, but there was time for this information to potentially leak out. But what we're led to believe is that all of the cast had no idea what was going on. So let's put on our thinking caps and let's really analyze this situation. Is Travis metagaming here? Now, we have to say, it's not completely out of the question. It wondered, how would the cast not be spoiled from this? Surely Matt would have had to told them to stay off all social media until a certain episode, because surely someone was either tweeting at the cast or DMing the cast to let them know about what is happening. You know how people are on the internet. Everyone's down to spoil something for them, so there's no way that they could have used their Twitter or any of their social medias and not been spoiled. So then, is it possible that Travis was spoiled potentially on social media and then used the information in character to make himself look good? Yeah, possibly. It's possible. But is it probable? Is Travis the type of person who would metagame, especially potentially so blatantly, on their live show? Let's look a bit at the defense of Travis. Now, I've watched a lot of Critical Role, and over all 3 campaigns, I would say that in my opinion, I'm no expert, but Travis and Sam are the cast least likely to metagame, with Talis and Jaffe coming in number 1 as most likely. Please, Mr. Jaffe, it was just a joke. It was just a joke for comedic effect. Please do not cast that spell on me. Please. Let's be honest, we all know who the real metagaming problem was in Critical Role. It was Orion.
Oh, hi, Mark.
I know we're not supposed to talk about this guy, but if you want to see some weird metagaming stuff and then the cast calling another cast member on about it, go watch those first 20 episodes of Campaign 1. You got plenty of examples. However, is he possible of metagaming? Of course, everyone does it from time to time, whether they realize it or not. This happens quite often, actually, where characters think that they either hear some information that they're not actually in the room for, or they accidentally take some information in their mind of a spell, of a monster or something like that, and they accidentally use it in game. It happens all the time. It's not necessarily a bad thing when it's done unintentional and without malice. Now let's assume for a second that Travis really did metagame this incident. How do you think that car ride home with his wife, Laura Bailey, would have gone? Yeah, personally, I don't think that would have gone very well. Laura Bailey is probably the last person that I want to piss off from the Critical Role staff. You know that Laura, on the car ride home back to their house after that session, was grilling Travis, wanting to know how exactly he could have known. Was this just a hunch or not? I can almost rest assure you, if Travis would have metagame and come out to his wife, because I can almost imagine that he wouldn't lie to Laura about this, you best believe that Laura would have let him have it. You see, despite Travis's reputation from Grog in Campaign 1, the guy's really freaking smart. Obviously, playing a low-intelligence barbarian doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to show it, but even over the course of Campaign 1, you could see little aspects of Travis peeking through Grog. You see, Travis has a massive love of military combat and strategy. This is something that we've seen kind of cohesive through all of his characters pretty much, especially with Grog and Ford, and a little bit of Chetney, but way more with Grog and Ford. While Grog most of the time was a stumbling buffoon, every once in a while he would drop some real nuggets of wisdom, and in combat scenarios, Travis was always the first to kind of muster the troops to tell people, we need to go here, we need to go here, we should position like this is what we should do, this is how we should attack, this is how we should set an ambush. It's because the guy personally is a huge kind of warfare tactician fan. He's got a really good mind for this sorts of stuff. As well, he's got a really good detective mind, which we'll come to talk about later. So we know that Travis is a very thought-provoking player. He just needed to play a character that allowed him to use his mind, as opposed to how he was playing Grog. Ford was kind of that character, but Ford was more of a charismatic presence than an actual thinker, an actual mind. So it wasn't until, I would argue, that he played Sarret. Obviously, Travis was playing Chetney before he was playing Sarret, but it really seems that Travis's time playing Sarret and EXU Calamity really influenced kind of how he wants to play D&D, what he enjoys. Travis's character Sarret from EXU Calamity was like a giga detective. It was basically like a high-level character who was extremely good at perceiving, figuring stuff out. So it allowed Travis to use the mechanics as well as his natural mind to kind of problem solve in a really fun way. Ever since EXU Calamity, Travis, to me at least, has been playing Chetney in a more Sarret-inspired kind of way. So is Travis metagaming here? I mean, it's technically possible. Someone could have easily sent him a DM spoiling it, and then he just hit it really well, but it seems rather unlikely. Travis, to me, has always seemed like one of the most forthright, play-by-the-rules type character. If anything, he's been one of the players, in addition with, I would say, probably Liam, that is best at keeping the party on track and not metagaming. With all that in mind, it really doesn't seem likely that Travis metagamed here. Maybe it's possible you could argue that the move that Chetney did was maybe something that the character normally wouldn't do. To me, this seems right up the character Chetney's alley. I mean, he's always been doing weird stuff, saying weird stuff, kind of putting the parties in awkward scenarios. He's not afraid to say what he thinks, and we got to remember that, the rest of the party was extremely trusting of Dusk for the most part. There's a reason why they didn't see it coming, and it's because they didn't expect a guest character to be an antagonist. Travis, on the other hand, his mind, seems to work a little bit differently than the others, that he was one of the main people, one of the only cast members, I would say, that seemed to have any real suspicion of Erika's character. But then I think we can clear Travis here as well, and I think, honestly, if Laura would have found out that Travis was cheating, well, she might have killed him. Metagaming is just something that's going to happen at your table or in your game. It's kind of unavoidable at times, and not all metagaming is technically bad. Matt Mercer has talked about this several times to a bit of a controversy with a lot of D&D fans, but sometimes metagaming can be all right. Small metagaming can be used to basically further the story if needed. How many times as a player have you realized, okay, this is the direction that the DM is pointing me towards, and maybe my character wouldn't go there, but for the sake of brevity or the sake of the narrative, my character's not going to cause a fuss, right? That's metagaming in a way, but there's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, you just got to try to be cognizant of what's going on in your head. What is the parameters that I've set for my character? How do they think? How do they behave? Is this something they would know? And if you don't know, ask your DM. It's that simple. I will say that this interaction with Travis definitely caught me off guard when I was watching this episode live, but I think once you look into all of the details, it's very unlikely that Travis was metagaming. It just doesn't seem like something that he would do. It doesn't seem like something that the rest of his friends in the cast would be okay with him doing, especially not Matt, especially not Liam, and especially not Laura. So by the power vested in me in the Critter fanbase, I declare Travis Willingham not guilty. As always, if you enjoyed the video or learned something new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to ring that bell, and don't forget to check out some of our other Critical Role content, like our episode breakdowns, our lore videos, and our theory videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Stay safe out there. As always, peace, love, adieu.